So Templeman, they called him the maker of Van Halen, and he got a little just jilted by that. He said, I think that's kind of weird. I don't mean that they were there before me. I'm not in the band. They were a group before I signed them. And he said that he was really good friends with them over the years. Al and Ed, the two brothers, where they would spend New Year's Eve at his house every New Year's. He says a lot of people don't know this, but all the backgrounds of the Van Halens, almost every single one of them would be Mike, me, and Ed, meaning all the background vocals. I would double...
That was very interesting.
Yes, I would double Ed because his voice wasn't strong enough, but that's not in the book, Mr. Renoff. I question your authority. So,
didn't he say he doubled?
I'm teasing you, Greg.
But didn't he say he doubled Mike's voice in the book?
I thought he said. I think he pointed it out in one instance, but then in this interview, he's like, "Yeah, it was kind of me all the time." You know what I mean? Like, I think he had an instance where he's like, "Yeah, I jumped in there on that." I forgot. I think it might have been "Dance the Night Away" or something. There was something where we was talking about making the song. And he's like, yeah, and I jumped in there and did some high harmonies and with Mike and Ed. But this is like, yeah, that's basically me all the time in the back. Because those backgrounds are fucking strong. I mean, they're like, don't get me wrong. Mike's amazing, and Ed's there backing him up. But it was a little, the soup was a little thicker than we thought.
Yeah.
He also said that Michael Anthony was a big part of the Van Halen sound, that California metal sound. His voice gave it that youthful sound. I couldn't sing that high. As I said, I would have doubled Ed's parts on most of the backgrounds, but not all of them, but a lot of them. Like Dance the Night Away. That would be me, Ed, and Mike. Another thing I don't think I talked about in the book much, but Al was really great. And I did say this in our episode about the book, that he really didn't praise Al that much. But maybe he's looking back saying, you know what, I could have thrown a little more bones to Big Al. He also played like a metronome, and he was almost like an associate producer. He'd tell me outside the studio, why don't you have Ed do this? He was really helpful, record after record after record. And when we moved up to Ed's, I got uncomfortable because Ed would get up and start drinking immediately. That's when I went with Dave and did that EP. I figured I'd give Ed some time to clean up his act, but then I did Eat 'Em and Smile. I always figured it would help put Van Halen back. I do not understand that math. To make them work again. Dave's not the easiest guy in the world. He also said I was scheduled to do a David Lee Roth follow-up to Eat 'Em and Smile with Dave. I had hits with him from the first EP. We did Just a Gigolo. So Eat 'Em and Smile sold the same as Van Halen. That's wrong, by the way. Ted. Roth was selling out the Forum in Los Angeles. My goal was to put Van Halen back together. But anyway, I called up Dave and I said, listen, Aerosmith asked me to do the next album. I want to redeem myself. But they needed to do it, I think, in April sometime. And Dave was slated to do a record too. So I drove over to Dave. He had this funky little office, and he said, yeah, I think I need a new producer. And I said, fuck you. I already turned down Aerosmith to do this record. And I previously asked him, are we still on to do the next record? And he said, yeah. And he decides to fire me. So I lost the income from the Eat 'Em and Smile follow-up and the Aerosmith album, but I mainly wanted a shot by doing right by Aerosmith. From that point on, I never liked the guy. Ooh. And I had no use for him, you know? Prick. He says. I mean, he was perfect for Van Halen. They never would have made it without him. Those lyrics are genius, and his crazy non-singing. I mean, it did enter my head to get Sammy because Sammy was such a great singer, and Ed wanted me to borrow Ronnie Montrose's Marshall head. I didn't do that. But Dave, once I got in there, I knew there was a lot of smarts going on. He is really smart. So both high praise for David Lee Roth and real kick in the balls from Mr. Templeman.
He's still not happy.
Still a little hot.
All these years later about getting kicked off the Skyscraper album.
Well, I have a feeling this is my take right now. I really believe that if Ted went in to the Skyscraper sessions, Dave wouldn't have been able to do that Skyscraper album. Ted would have told him, are you out of your fucking mind? With this band that you had, first of all, you came out like a shooting rocket with Eat 'Em and Smile. Great. Put you on the map. Established the band. Established you as a solo artist. Let's continue in this vein, especially when Van Halen wasn't. Van Halen was not doing what Roth was doing. Nothing against them. They went a whole different route, and let me tell you, they were incredibly successful at it. But Roth with Eat 'Em and Smile was really going down the Van Halen lane. When the more I think about Eat 'Em and Smile, there is shades of Fair Warning, lots of shades of Diver Down there. There's really good stuff on that album, and a real good mix. I think if Ted came in there and he was the producer, you would have never had all those keyboards and not enough Billy Sheehan. It would have been a rockin' fucking album. And I think Dave didn't want to do that. Dave really made a hard left with that album.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
But to tell Ted that, you're going to produce the next album, and then tell him a few months later, I don't need you anymore, and especially if he knew that Ted was slated to do the Aerosmith album, and now he just screwed him out of 2 gigs. I mean, that's, sticking up your middle finger and saying, F you, dude.
Yeah, especially
you're going out of your way to be a jerk.
Especially a guy who went out of his way for you. That man, let's be honest, Dave, that man, back in the day, Ed and fucking Al were ripping takes left and right. And Mike was too, according to Ted. He was right there. He was working with Dave. And he was going over everything, and he was piecemealing takes together to make that debut album as good as it is. And let me tell you, there's a lot of nice quality production by not only Ted, but Don Landy on that album. That's one of the best produced albums ever in history, as far as I'm concerned. Biggest Van Halen fan as I am, Dave owes Ted a lot. And, I mean, for Christ's sake, he launched your solo career on a whim.
Right. And the thing is, if Roth didn't want Ted, he just should have told him up front, you know what?
Yeah.
Take the Aerosmith.
I'm
going in a new direction. You're not going to like it.
Yeah.
No offense, but I'm just going to work on it with Steve.
Right. So,
with Steve Vai.
That's true.
And that would have been, and Ted would have been like, okay, fine, I'll miss you, but, I respect your decision.
That's right.
But, to call him to his little office and say, you're fired.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a total ego power
yeah.
play. That was completely unnecessary.
I think, to be honest with you, with Dave, it was all financial. I think Dave, let's be honest, Ted takes a nice hefty cut of those records. He does. He fucking.
Well, Dave. Well, there's a reason why Dave is listed as producer and Steve Vai is listed as
co-producer.
I think it's co-producer.
Yeah.
And and you've spoken to Vai.
Yeah, he basically made the album.
And Vai rolls his eyes.
Yeah.
You talk to him about the co-producer credit he got because he was as much, if not more, of a producer than Dave was.
Of course he was. He's fucking Steve Vai. And look at Steve Vai. We all know the production master that Steve Vai is. And he's ridiculous.
Right.
All right, so we are on to some lists. Interesting lists came out, Dave. So Louder came out with the 20 most underrated rock albums ever. And what was number 10? Diver Down. That's right. And we have an episode in our early catalog called Don't Be Down on Diver Down. And it is Dave and I's soliloquy to the 1982 album that we love so much. It is a ear-friendly album. It's the type of album you throw on and you listen to beginning to end, all 29 minutes and 11 seconds out or whatever the fuck it is. And it really is a fantastic record. It's a fun album. So they said here, an album that gets closer to the philosophy and spirit of the band than any of their others except for the debut in 1984. It has energy, humor, and attitude. If you don't understand Diver Down, then you don't get the essence of the David Lee Roth era of Van Halen. How do you like that?
That's a great quote, and I feel like this is an old article that came out before.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because I remember that line from a similar article that talked about this topic. So I'm wondering if they recycled it.
That could be. Anyway, I just want to also note some of the other albums that were on that list, just to give you a flavor of what was on there. Kiss the Elder, number 9. AC, you don't know anything about that album. What do you know about that album?
No, I do, and I just can't get my head around it. Sorry. There's some good songs on it, but I get where they're coming from, but don't think it's that good.
Do you have a problem with the Elder, Dave? I would like to quote the Elder, if you don't mind. A world without heroes.
And that's not a bad song,
Is a
Gene. I'll
world
give you
without
for that one.
sun.
All right, so, and also on that list, AC/DC's Flick of the Switch, number 11. Number 12, one of my all-time faves, yes, 90215. Love that album. Oh, my God, I love that album.
Yeah, how did that album get on that list?
I don't know.
That's, I never thought of that album as underrated.
Bon Jovi, 7800 Fahrenheit, number 13. And my absolute all-time favorite, Motley Crue's 1994 self-titled album, number 17. Oh, my God. Go get that album.
I know you love that album.
Oh, you have no idea. Another list, top 30 American classic rock bands by Ultimate Classic Rock. And where do you think Van Halen fell, Dave, in top 30?
I'm going to say they were number 12.
Nope. It was closer to your birthday. Number 14 on the top 30 American classic rock bands from Ultimate Classic Rock. And I'll give you who are some of the other ones. Kiss is at number 13. CCR at number 12. Blondie, number 11. Sly and the Family Stone, number 10. Talking Heads, number 9. Parliament Funkadelic, number 8. Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, number 7. Ramones, number 6. Aerosmith, number 5. Steely Dan, number 4. Allman Brothers, number 3. Number 2, Lynyrd Skynyrd. And number 1, the Eagles. I do think there are some that are missing, to be honest with you. Well, the bottom half. Let me tell you the bottom half. You got Blue Oyster Cult, the Beach Boys, Simon and Garfunkel, Chicago, and the Doobie
Why are you
Brothers.
giving Simon and Garfunkel a Boston accent when they're from New York?
I love talking about Simon and Garfunkel there. I just like the way it comes out when I use my Boston accent. You know, I like that song Cecilia from Simon and Garfunkel. It's just kind of like a thing I just like to do. It's stupid. The car...
Just checking.
Dude,
Just
I do these things just to entertain myself. Cheap Trick, The Cars, Journey, The Doors, The Stooges, Little Feat, Grateful Dead, Santana's, Easy Top. All these people are on that list. Well, Van Halen made it to number 14. At least they're in the middle there. So
right.
All right, now, this is where we shit on people because Rolling Stone came out with the top 50 bassists. And, of course, Michael Anthony wasn't on there. All right, look, I understand that Michael Anthony is not the world's greatest bassist. Okay, that's good. And we all know that he's more than just a bassist. He's a background vocalist. He's the spirit of the band, all that stuff. I'm going to let that go. But Jesus H. Christ. Top 50 bassists, you don't have Billy Sheehan on this list?
Crime.
You have got to be kidding. That's like leaving Michael Jordan off the list of best basketball players.
I don't understand why he's not even on the list.
I know.
I don't. Know. It's amazing to me. And you know, it's funny. I think I mentioned this before, but I was on a website and they were talking about, you know, their top favorite bassists of all time. And I went through like 10 pages of stuff looking for Billy's name because I was just going to like it.
Right.
There was only one person who named him.
Wow.
Other than me who was going to name him.
Yeah.
And I'm like 10 pages. And it's not like on that page and on the list you're referring to, there's a lot of bassists who are worthy of it. And that's fine. I get it. But like somebody off that list had to go to make room for Billy.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I would have bumped Bill Wyman myself, but that's just a personal
Bill Wyman, okay, yeah. Just a little side note on Bill Wyman, Dave. I'll give you this fun. So you know I'm a big Stones fan, right? So Bill Wyman is the only Stone I have ever interviewed. But I got to interview Bill. He's a low-key guy. Very nice, though. English gentleman, you know, real nice. So I get to interview Bill, and I wanted to tell him this story, and I got all excited, and I tell him the story, and I go like this. So I know this might sound strange, but my first Stones album and the way I got into the Stones was through 1980's Emotional Rescue. So I love that song. I love that album. That was sort of my indoctrination into the Stones. Okay, no problem. Everybody comes in at some point. So that whole opening bass line, and I don't know if you remember it in your head, but it's sort of like boom, 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 boom. It's this like really cool opening bass hook, which is not normal for a hit song, but it did have this really unique bass hook, and I just thought this was the coolest thing ever. And I'll never forget, I begged my dad to take me to Disco Mat in Queens so I could buy a cassette of this album, and I wanted this album so bad. And I had listened to it on the radio for weeks, and I was trying to find it, and I'd hear it, and then I wanted to get the name of it, and I found it was the Rolling Stones, and it was Emotional Rescue, and I begged my dad, and we're out in the pouring rain, and we go to, like, Disco Mat, and I finally get the last cassette they had, and it was, like, crazy. and I listened to it over and over again, and that really launched